Speaking of teams retooling and revamping and maximizing their personnel, let's move to the LA Lakers and their coaching search because we just got on and recorded this episode like a couple hours after the Dan Hurley news broke that he's going to stay with the UConn Huskies, turning down the 6 year, what
Yeah.
was it, 6 year, 70 million?
$70 million for 6 years. Dan Hurley said, no, I'm staying at UConn. Everyone had the Leonardo DiCaprio from The Wolf of Wall Street clip going around. It was like Dan Hurley in the Huskies locker room. It's like, I'm fucking staying. I'm sure it was a bit of a celebration in there. I really was hoping that we'd get like a clip of like a press conference, like everyone like celebrates that he gave the middle finger to the Lakers effectively by saying no after kind of dragging this out through the weekend. But what I wanted to do was kind of trace the Lakers coaching search. And now it's a coaching caper because the coach is missing. They still haven't found one officially yet. But I wanted to trace the sort of media story that was the Lakers coaching search. And we know that JJ Redick, as I talked about in a previous segment, is still, now that Dan says no, that Hurley said no, still at the forefront of that. But I wanted to just kind of talk about the media landscape around the Lakers coaching search and how the flow of information has been contorted throughout the process. All right, so March 19th, JJ Redick premieres his Mind the Game podcast with LeBron James. Everyone's freaking out. Oh my God, LeBron's doing a podcast. Do you think that the Mind the Game podcast was like a preliminary interview for the coaching search? Because we know that LeBron, like after the official stuff started, has liked JJ and preferred JJ over all the other candidates, even after Hurley came in the picture.
I don't know. It is so weird and why this whole thing is so bizarre. At least, like, I don't think LeBron went into it thinking it was some interview. Did the Lakers owners and Rob Pelinka see it and go, hey, like, they have good chemistry and they think similarly about basketball. Let's look into that. Maybe. I mean, that has to be somewhat a part of it because I know they want to appease LeBron. And I don't know if LeBron's threatening to leave. You never know what's going on with LeBron and his passive aggressive messages and his subtlety and what he wants and how he's using his leverage. But don't feel like,
right.
yeah,
He's always doing that subtle stuff, right? But the two like little just bullet points I'll just like leave you to think about is that there had been reports for several weeks leading up to the premiere of this podcast that the relationship between Darvin and the entire Lakers locker room was incredibly strained because they were mad that he like questioned their effort or whatever in these games where their defense was terrible. And so I wouldn't say that he went into it thinking that, but it was sort of like probably in the back of his mind that he's like, I can't wait till this guy is gone. Okay, so on April 19th, a month later, Dan Hurley goes on The Old Man and the Three, that's JJ Redick's main podcast, to have an interview with JJ after he won his second NCAA tournament title. LeBron tweeted about Dan Hurley that same day because they had talked about him on the Mind the Game podcast the week before or something like that because they were so impressed with his offensive sets. LeBron said, he's so damn good, along with his staff, super creative with their O, exclamation point. Love it. On April 15th, JJ Redick leaves Anthony Davis off of his DPOY ballot and his hypothetical, I don't know if they're hypothetical because he might have an actual vote, but his all defense teams. I just wanted to put that out there because it's relevant to Anthony Davis's preferences in coach as this search goes on. On April 22nd, the Lakers blew a 20-point lead to the Nuggets in game 2 of round 1 in the playoffs. And that kind of like sets the whole search in motion, right? Because that's the point where it's not just, oh, there's some like strained tension in the locker room. We kind of don't like this guy. Stories come out. It's like, okay, when is it? This guy's getting fired as soon as the series is over because we already know the Nuggets are going to win now that they've gone up 2-0. On May 3rd, the Lakers fired Darvin Ham. This is 4 days after they were officially eliminated in that game 5 on the second buzzer beater that Jamal had in that series. Yeah, Woj sent out the official dismissal tweet. What do you think the Lakers organization, and whenever I say Lakers organization, I'm basically just referring to Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss because they apparently have their own little clique. That's just
Oh,
the
they
two of
do.
them where they have their own information and nobody else in the organization has it. And that's probably the case in a lot of front offices and owner relationships, but it seems particularly secretive in this one. But what do you think they think of Darvin Ham's tenure overall, given the fact that earlier in the season they were putting out stories with, through their like Lakers people that are like sources in the organization, support Darvin Ham, want to keep him, blah, blah, blah. But then he gets fired 4 days after they get eliminated. And even though like months earlier, there were like explicit stories that were like, they told LeBron that Darvin Ham is not going to be fired, at least mid-season, right?
I just don't see any scenario where a journalist asks them about the current coach and they're like, yeah, we have some serious questions about him and we'll be
Yeah.
evaluating that after the season. Like, you have to come out and just be like, we
Right.
support
Like
him.
mid-season, you kind of have to. I will say though that like contrast to the Cavs, they had like the athletic piece and like all of these stories about why he's bad, and then they put out like Woj had like a Woj bomb that wasn't an actual bomb that said uh that the Cavs organization is taking a serious look at JB Bickerstaff's tenure. This is well before he eventually does get fired, which I'll talk about in this
Yeah.
timeline.
Well, because I thought, yeah, then that was going to happen like in the middle of the season or something, and he ended up
Right.
going the whole season.
Right.
But
So it's a little
um,
different when it's mid-season. You're right. I think that's like
yeah,
the correct interpretation is that they're just trying to not be
but
assholes mid-season. Like
but
you have to support
ultimate,
your people.
I think ultimately they thought he lost the locker room and probably questioned his rotations. I think many Lakers fans throughout the season
Yeah.
were not happy with that and blame a lot of the Lakers getting to the 7 seed on that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't beat the Nuggets, whatever. They know that that's a tough matchup for them, but like they had to play the Nuggets because they were the 7 seed, which they blame on Darvin Ham.
Darvin gets fired. Actually, it was reported, I believe, the day before that the official firing was announced, that JJ Redick and Ty Lue had emerged as front runners in the coaching search. At the time, I thought, okay, Ty Lue is going to re-sign with the Clippers because the Clippers love him, and Steve Ballmer is absolutely going to give him whatever bag he needs to retain him. So about 3 weeks pass. We're at May 21st, and this is when the stories come out about how much the Lakers love JJ Redick. They compare him to Pat Riley. This is a quote from a story in The Athletic, where they said the Lakers are infatuated with Redick's potential, according to league sources, viewing him as a Pat Riley-like coaching prospect. And I just want to put out there that Pat Riley was an assistant coach with the Lakers for 2 years before they actually gave him a head coaching job.
Yeah, what
So
does that comparison even mean?
I don't know, it was like young, like vision, like he's like this charismatic guy, but there's a very big difference in experience. And I wanted to ask you this because do you think that the Lakers actually believed like maybe they liked JJ Redick a lot, but did they believe that JJ Redick could be, quote, the next Pat Riley? Or do you think they liked this guy? He sounded really smart, and they know LeBron liked him, right? Because of the podcast, but they know how it looks optically hiring a guy who has no NBA coaching experience, no college coaching experience. Someone on Twitter was joking today, one of our favorite draft guys on Twitter, CT Fazio, has more coaching experience than JJ Redick because he coaches middle school. JJ Redick talks about coaching his son's team. He's in elementary school, I believe. But were they trying to like bolster him up and try to like, I don't know, clean up his image before they hired JJ just so that they don't look crazy, even though they're out here comparing him to Pat Riley?
I definitely think they were doing that. But I think it was like a slow growing plan rather than like a deliberate, like, hey, let's compare him to Riley so that people don't think we're crazy. It's that they are crazy. So,
Okay.
so they're just like, hey, JJ Redick might be good. Then
Yeah.
the comparisons start coming in, and I think they actually believe that he might be a Pat Riley like young charismatic guy who has this vision for the future, who's
They're all
fresh
about the
and
flash. They're like,
yeah, the
he
Lakers.
is charismatic. He's a great podcaster. He's on ESPN. He's like, he just presents himself really well, right? So inevitably, if you like people that interview well, you're going to like JJ Redick. But if you don't look for substance beyond that, not that JJ wouldn't have it, but there are serious questions about what kind of NBA caliber head coach he would be without any of that experience,
Hmm.
right?
Honestly, I'm thinking more of a Steve Nash thing than a Pat Riley thing because I could see that where it's like, yeah, he could get along with the guys. He could put together a really good staff. I mean, like Steve Nash had D'Antoni as an assistant, which is pretty wild. It didn't
That's
go as well
crazy.
as people thought, but like JJ Redick might be able to get a good staff together.
Yeah.
He can get along with the guys, and we know coaching is about building relationships with guys as well. It's not just the schematics. JJ Redick is a knowledgeable basketball person. Is he going to be able to be the kind of coach that's going to come up with these amazing adjustments and these great, great game plans in a very competitive league? That's yet to be seen. But
I mean, maybe,
um,
but maybe that's only like 2% of the job because like you have to get your guys healthy to the postseason and get them through that 82 game grind
yeah,
without like
managing that.
hating each other.
But yeah, keep
So
going with the timeline.
May 23rd, JB Bickerstaff finally gets officially fired from the Cavs, and James Borrego, who is another name near the top of the candidate list for the Lakers, is announced as one of the leading candidates for that job. Next day, Rich Paul, who is LeBron's agent and Anthony Davis's agent, there's no conflict of interest there, tells the Lakers that basically they need to focus on Anthony Davis more in their coaching search. He says, in my opinion, the Lakers' focus should probably be more so on Anthony Davis than LeBron at this point. A lot of people at the time read that as like, oh, is he like trying to put out like subtle messages on LeBron's behalf, right? To be like, oh, maybe he is leaving this summer. Like, don't think about him in your plans, blah, blah, blah. Or just like the general, like LeBron keeps and through his people keeps trying to put this idea out there that he's not hands-on, not very involved in this Lakers coaching search. And then on May 27th, it's reported that JJ was targeting these assistants, and we talked about that on a previous segment that included James Borrego, who is another head coaching candidate, Sam Cassell, who is another candidate for the head coach position at the Lakers, and I think Jared Dudley, who would be coming from the
The
Mavs.
Mavs.
I can rationalize that the Lakers were the ones that put this out there, like I did for the Pat Riley thing, that they wanted to put it out there that like, oh, JJ's targeting these like very experienced NBA coaches to be on his assistant coaching staff, right? Do you actually think that it was the Lakers who put this out there, or do you think it was JJ's people? Because you could make arguments that either benefits, and then like regardless of who it benefits, do you think that JJ did the right if it was him, do you think he did the right thing by putting like this out there that like, oh, these other like guys I'm competing with for this position, actually I'm looking at them to put on my staff, if it was him? But if you think it was the Lakers, like, yeah, I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
I feel like a lot of people were kind of like clowning the Lakers for seriously considering JJ Redick. I don't think it was met with a lot of positivity. So I actually think it was Borrego who leaked it because he was like, they're
Ooh.
considering JJ Redick over
They
me. Are
really
you
wanna
kidding
try
me?
to hire me as JJ Redick's assistant?
And he's
That'd be
putting that out
really
there.
funny.
He put it out
Borrego's
there.
actually pulling
Yeah.
all these strings. And everyone's like, "Oh, he's so boring, like, there's no, like, vision, whatever," and he's like, "I'll show you.
Yeah, he's
I'll
like, I
show you
can't believe this. I'm
imaginations."
leaking this shit. Like JJ contacted him and he's like, are you kidding me?
Why
But I
I
don't know.
one of the Lakers guys has his own, like, conspiracy corner segment. He puts an actual tinfoil hat on, and I actually love this tinfoil hat theory that James Borrego is actually the
There
one
you go.
leaking all of this stuff. Okay, so, like you said, it was met with a lot of, I think, side eye and derision when it was like, seriously, the Lakers are actually on this path to hiring JJ Redick to be their head coach. And Then it was reported that the Lakers had not yet made a decision officially, and they're still between people, even though, like, for weeks, it was just positive stuff about JJ. So June 4th comes around, and this is where the big Shams tweet that the Lakers are zeroing in on JJ Redick. And I'm like, okay, like, it's coming. Like, here we go. And the next day, league sources came out and said that they've heard that Anthony Davis wants Borrego over JJ, which is really funny. Maybe plays into this theory that Borrego has been maybe more active in this leaking small bits of information game than anyone thought. So this is a loaded question, but in light of everything we know now with the Hurley stuff and all of that, the fact that 80's favorite candidate seems to be an add-on whenever they talk about these lists, and especially after Hurley's name came into the picture, it was like, well, Hurley and JJ Redick, even when the Lakers were pretending like we're still kind of deciding between who we want more or whatever. And then Borrego is also, still on the list. But Rich Paul had to say, like, in my opinion, they should be focusing more on AD and whatever. And maybe it was more about like subtle LeBron hints, but AD is also his client. Like, I just want to know, do you actually think that the Lakers organization, i.e. Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka, respect Anthony Davis as their franchise superstar?
I think they assume that he's going to be their franchise superstar. Maybe their actions aren't respecting him enough. I'm not sure. Maybe this is some kind of a statement from Rich Paul where he's telling them like, hey, like 80 isn't some guarantee to be on your team for forever, because as soon as LeBron's done, he's bolting for somebody else. So you better make him happy. But also, LeBron has always been on this like, and this goes back to the Cavs with Kyrie, of this like torch passing like mindset where he's like, I want this to be Kyrie's team, and I want this to be
Yeah.
AD's team, and here, I'll give you my number, AD, and like, let's make this about you. And like, I think LeBron also truly believes he needs AD to be one of the best players in the world to like win
Yeah.
a championship before he retires. So I think there's like a lot of different things going on, but it is an interesting comment from Rich Paul about AD, and maybe they should hire a coach with AD in mind. I'm not sure.
So that same day, a piece came out in The Athletic. This is like the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, whitewashing of trying to hire JJ Redick machine. But that piece talked about how there are no doubts about JJ Redick's work ethic, particularly in comparison to Darvin Ham's. One of the common internal complaints with Ham was his lack of preparation. This was not something that came out during the season. Of all the complaints about him, by the way, that I followed, and I heard a lot of Lakers complaining about different aspects of Darvin Ham's coaching throughout the season. The work ethic and unpreparedness was not necessarily one of them. This kind of harkens back to that one comment that Anthony Davis made in that round 1 series, though, where he said, I think it was after game 2 or 3, maybe, where he's like, we're just out there sometimes, but we don't know what we're doing. And I thought that was a shot at, like, a very specific shot at Darvin Ham. So I'm not saying that this isn't true, but the fact that you're putting this very specific thing out there, attacking his work character after you've already fired him, like, you don't have to deal with this guy anymore. This is well over a month after you fired him. And it feels like it's in service of, and it is, like, literally the sentence starts with, there's no doubt about JJ Redick's worth that, like, particularly in comparison to Darvin Ham. It just feels very like mean and unnecessary. And it feels like it's coming from the Lakers more so than, I mean, it is, because it's literally like weird. It's a quote here. Like, there are no doubts about it. And internal complaints within the organization.
Yep.
It's just one of those things that makes you like, I saw this and thought like, man, why would anyone want to, not anyone, but why would a lot of good coaches that can get a high level job somewhere else want to come here when this is how they treat you on the way out?
If you're signing up for it, you got to be ready. I mean, I think most people involved with the Lakers organization, from the players to the coaching staff, know that they're going to be under a lot of scrutiny just because of the nature of the franchise. So
no, I completely agree. It's just like, it just feels like a shit show. Like, I don't know what kind of operation they're running over there, and it just keeps getting worse. So, okay, again, same day that Darvin piece comes out, it's all like blending together. JJ goes on podcast, and he gets asked directly about the Shams tweet that says, oh, they're zeroing in on JJ Redick. And he's like, I'm focused on the finals. 100% focus on calling the finals. And Shams, emphasis on Shams, who broke it, will be addressed after the season. So here's my question to you. And this part's a little complicated because my thoughts on it changed a lot over the last 5 days or so. Did JJ fuck himself here? By that, I mean, originally we thought that the ESPN and the NBA finals wanted to keep the announcement under wraps. We were like, okay, JJ's a lock. They've talked about like he's hiring these high level assistant coaches, everybody. Don't worry, everything's going to be smooth. But that's done. But maybe NBA and ESPN want to keep the focus on the finals. So we want to keep this coaching announcement under wraps, particularly because JJ's calling the finals. I don't think they'd care if he wasn't on the finals broadcast team, for example. But what if what really happened is that JJ got a little too confident in this because he's had this like month long just like media praise coming out of the Lakers organization about how much they like him and how good they think he'll be. And he's thinking, I'm their number one guy. I don't have any real competition. They just have this Borrego guy on these lists just to show that they're looking at other people. They're calling me the next Pat Riley. Maybe he made the Lakers wait before he actually accepted an offer. Now we know that they hadn't actually offered him something yet, right? Because they were able to go after Hurley, or maybe they were in the middle of discussions with JJ, who knows? Or maybe he's playing hardball with like the contract negotiations, because like I said, we don't know how far that went. Do you think it was that actually, and not, oh, the Lakers have already offered him something and like it's basically wrapped up?
Do I think that it's agreed upon? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Already? Or
or
do you
did
think
like
he's
was
negotiating?
this like JJ waiting maybe too long and maybe like risking getting this job, as we know from uh the events of last week with all the Hurley news, because he thought, well, I don't actually have any competition, so I'm gonna make him sweat it out a little bit.
I would he, but he'd only need to have him sweat it out if he like didn't like the offer, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm like, and JJ's very, very successful. I don't know if he's like has some number in mind that he would like hit for me to leave this ESPN job and my podcast and all this shit,
Maybe it's
which
years, like he wants the
yeah,
security,
yeah,
or
it could be. I don't know what it is. There was rumors though that the Lakers wanted to like get it done during the finals and not after, and I don't know,
right.
maybe it
That's
was
why I
like
thought, oh, are they like impatient because ESPN's not letting JJ? Or maybe they're impatient with JJ and it's actually his decision to, or had been his decision to not like formally accept this and like get the ball rolling.
I could also see like it being simple and it just being JJ just thinking like I think it's just like the right thing to do for me to just focus on me calling this finals than like
You're
take
taking him
it.
at face value. That's
I
not what
could,
this exercise is about, Will.
I could just see that being the simple answer, but who knows? Maybe he wanted, maybe he didn't like the offer.
Okay. So that podcast appearance happens June 5th. June 6th, we get the big Woj bomb. Breaking. The Los Angeles Lakers are targeting Connecticut's Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next coach and are preparing a massive long term contract offer to bring the back to back national champion to the NBA. That comes out. ESPN sources say the Lakers have had preliminary contact with Hurley and sides are planning to escalate discussions in the coming days. Hurley's been at the forefront of the Lakers search from the beginning of the process, even though they just made preliminary contact on this day that you're making this announcement. Even though while the organization has done its due diligence, this is the part where it's like, okay, this is like Lakers fluff. Like we're just doing our due diligence, looking at all these other candidates, but actually you've been our guy the whole time. And also, Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss are eager to formally discuss their vision with Hurley of marrying his dominant program built upon his tactical acumen and elite player development to the storied Lakers brand. That's like, okay, he got like half of that from Hurley and half of that from Jeannie Buss.
The language of this is so funny to me because Jeannie Buss is such like a I want to run the Lakers like a family business, and then it's like Hurley is marrying his dominant program. Like they're so obsessed with this weird like family shit.
It is strange, right?
Um,
And then on top of that, they're like, well, these are two very different coaches. Like JJ last year, I knew he interviewed for the Raptors job. Who knows if he interviewed for other jobs that were available last year? But that's why I was surprised that he was really on the Lakers radar, because I thought that JJ, if anything, was going to be interested in coaching in like a newer, like rebuild situation, low pressure, working with younger players, things like that. But apparently not. And he was ready to like jump onto maybe the highest pressure coaching job in the NBA just by virtue of every aspect of that context, working with
Mhm.
LeBron and everything. But they come out with reasons that they want Hurley and why he's like the perfect guy for the job. And they say that the perfect allure traces back to the changing landscape of the NBA. They want him to come in because he's so good at young player development and scouting. They want him to help basically enhance their young core of Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and Max Christie. And because with the changing CBA, they're going to rely more on their draft picks and young players and like all this stuff. When months ago we heard that the Lakers were planning on trading 3 draft picks, etc., for a star this summer.
I didn't know like how this fit would work with the Lakers, where they're very win now. Like LeBron needs to win now. He can't rely on Max Christie and Rui Hachimura. They need like, but it's hard. The NBA is different now, so I get like kind of wanting to change the approach, but still, this doesn't make that
But
much
it's like
sense.
on a dime. It's not like this
Yeah.
has been their plan for it's the complete opposite of everything that they've put out there uh over the last few months
Hmm.
compared to it's not that it's a very sound strategy and it sounds sound it sounds good, right? Because it makes sense, but I just don't believe that that was their intent, just like I don't believe that
Yeah.
Hurley was their guy all along and they'd only just met with him when they announced that they were talking to him or had been looking at it the whole time. Like I just it just sounds like they're trying to sound like an organization that like does things the right way and like does things that make sense in an organized way that has a good process and ends up with like finding the best candidates and whatever, but then they end up telling on themselves every step
Yeah.
of the way.
That's pretty much what it is.
Okay, so then we get to the final phase of this. So I'll just go through the rest of the headlines and we can discuss the end of it. We talked about the Lakers like process as an organization. It was actually revealed in an article that came out the same day as the Hurley stuff that JJ was the first and only candidate to that point that had had a face-to-face meeting with the Lakers. Over a month has happened since they fired Darvin Ham. If this is true, that's absolutely crazy. That happens. They announced they're looking at Hurley. Actually, he's our guy. I can't imagine how JJ Redick is feeling at this time, especially if he's the one that kind of delayed moving on to the next stage of that process. Like, oh fuck, what have I done? But Hurley reportedly flies out to Los Angeles the following Friday to meet with the Lakers organization, which is Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss. And they're going to lay out this grand vision and how we're going to marry our storied franchise with your, I don't know, program building and offense and whatever. The following Saturday night, he is pictured at a Billy Joel concert because he's there with his assistant coach who posts the video on IG. And I'm only talking about this because it was a huge story on Twitter. Both fan bases were absolutely beside themselves trying to figure out if this meant that he was like celebrating because he had just taken the job in LA, or oh, he's already back, which means he didn't want to stay there and they let him leave without making a decision. So he's probably going to stay with UConn. Who knows, right? Well, now we know. Then it was announced in the pregame show of Game 2 of the NBA Finals that Hurley was going to think it over and announce his decision on Monday, which was the next day. We didn't talk about this, but Game 1 of the NBA Finals in the pregame show and during halftime was littered with talking about the announcement that the Lakers were pursuing Hurley. So that was the Lakers' way of trying to poke the Celtics in the eye when they're in the NBA Finals
That's funny.
by just dominating the media cycle. I mean, it kind of worked, right? So finally we come to today, the day that we're recording, June 10th, Monday. I was up very early because I had no idea what time this would be announced. I know it's East Coast and I live in the Pacific time zone. Hurley is an absolute egomaniac, is what I learned through the couple of hours that I was up before this announcement this morning, because everyone's freaking out about when this decision is going to be made. I thought it might be a first thing in the morning thing. There was no time announced. Eventually, it's announced there's going to be some kind of press conference, but it doesn't actually, I don't know, materialize in a way where there's like a stream or something you can find. The UConn men's basketball practice was scheduled for some time block between 12 and 4, and that's apparently the normal way that they do it. But then at 12 Eastern time, they move it back 2 hours. And everyone's freaking out for an additional 2 hours or hour and a half because eventually, while everyone's looking for Hurley, they're like standing outside the practice facility in all these clips that people are posting. He had apparently just kind of been in the building, and then his wife shows up in her car. And everyone's like, oh my God, does she always come to practices? There's no way they're not announcing that they're leaving now. Everyone's like dissecting every like little bit of information on both sides of this because UConn men's basketball, like their fans are serious. Like the Northeast does not play when it comes to their basketball. Finally, it was announced by Woj because the actual announcement came behind closed doors because Hurley was just telling his players, as it turns out, and Woj, that he turned down the Los Angeles Lakers, their 6-year, $70 million offer. It was a no for him, and he's going to return to UConn to chase a third straight national title. The follow-up tweet from Woj, and this is the last news bit we'll talk about, is that after a dogged pursuit of Hurley over the past weeks, Lakers will regroup and resume bringing in candidates for interviews with the hope of hiring a coach by draft night, sources said. James Borrego is expected to remain part of the group of Lakers who could do their first formal interview with JJ Redick. Here's my question. Why have the Lakers not conducted formal interviews yet? What have they been doing for the last 6 weeks? Even before Dan Hurley apparently became like pseudo available.
Maybe they said that to like somehow back up the fact that Hurley was always their like focus. So like, we haven't interviewed anyone else, so we were focused on Hurley. And we were only gearing up to offer to Redick because we didn't know Hurley was available.
But it makes them sound so much worse.
Yeah, I have no idea why.
They were about to offer to Redick without having conducted a formal interview, though? Like, it's also twisted.
Yeah, who knows what, like, this language means to them. I don't know what their process is or whatever, but that part is probably the weirdest one to me, where I'm the most confused.
Anyway, this saga actually, unfortunately, continues. I thought maybe Hurley accepts the offer and we're just kind of like, wow, the Lakers actually got what they wanted. They just like bumbled into like the best coach in college basketball to come like run their program. And they'll still suck, right? Because their roster has like issues and they don't want to pay luxury tax. But it's been an interesting tale, I will say, to just follow from the media perspective because of all of the different camps that leaked to all these different media outlets and how they have their own agendas, right? You had the Woj versus Shams battle because Shams says they're zeroing in on JJ Redick. And the next day, Woj is like, actually, they've been trying to get Hurley this whole time. Like,
that's weird.
Okay, sure. But also, I don't believe you. Or your sources, rather. Yeah, do you have any like closing thoughts on the whole saga?
The whole saga reminded me a little of Hurley Watch.
Hurley Watch.
Hurley Watch, yeah. Both of those involve the Lakers, obviously, because that is how the Lakers roll. They're very popular, so the speculation's going to be massive. And it's going to be in the limelight. I think that it probably would have been a good hire. Obviously, I don't know how it would have worked out, and I don't know what their strategy really would have been and what their roster looks like and what Hurley's vision is for the roster. I guess that would change depending on what coach they get. I think it would have been a good coaching hire. I'm more skeptical of Redick than I am of Hurley, obviously. So
both would have an adjustment period because the NBA is just different than everything else. But at least Hurley has like some experience trying to manage an entire program.
So I'm skeptical of the Redick thing, but I kind of want to see it just as a fan. It sounds fun to watch.
The last thing that I'll just leave our listeners with on this story is that Hurley had his own incentives in all of this. He rejected a reportedly similarly lucrative deal from the University of Kentucky. So that kind of indicated to you that like you had to give him something like a real reason to want to leave UConn. And maybe it would have been enough in another, timeline for it to have been like, oh wow, the Lakers, what a storied organization. But he was also kind of up and in the middle of negotiations for a contract extension with UConn, and I'm sure having the Lakers pursue him helped to elevate that. I really like the idea of James Borrego playing puppet master in
Hmm.
like the initial stages of all of this. So I'm gonna run with that theory for a little bit. I just wanted to let our listeners know that next episode we are doing a mailbag. So send us your questions about the finals, the off season. Finals might be over by the time we do that mailbag, so keep that in mind. Questions about other teams, questions about the Nuggets especially. We love talking about the Nuggets. Yeah, just let us know and we'll read them on the show and let you know our answers. But please remember to like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share these videos if you like them, hit the notification bell, leave us a review. We're on Spotify and Apple, or not Apple Music yet. We're working on it still. Amazon Music, we are there. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.